So welcome everyone to this discussion that we're having today about some emerging solutions, I guess, that we have in Australia to reduce food loss and food waste and where this fits in a circular economy. My name is Emma Coath and I'm now the Executive Chair of Rocket Cedar. And I'm currently on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, Naarm in Melbourne. So just as an introduction, roughly 1/3 of the world's food is never eaten. So it's a pretty serious issue. And by reducing food loss and waste, we can reduce the need for land and resources to be used to produce the food in the first place, as well as reducing greenhouse gas released in the process. And reducing food waste will also help to ensure that we have enough food to feed close to 10 billion people predicted by 2050. So in 2022, or a couple of years ago, let's just say, Rocket Cedar ran an accelerator program for 15 Australian startups with various solutions to reduce food waste and loss. And during the program, we enjoyed the wonderful support of the staff at End Food Waste Australia. And this year we have teamed up with them to run the Australian Food Waste Challenge, which we've been doing for over the past number of months. And it's an initiative that's directly aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, which aims to halve food loss and waste globally by 2030. So Australia has adopted this. Most nations across the globe have adopted it, and we've adopted it for this food waste challenge. And the challenge covers 9 categories. You can find out more about this on our website, www.rocketcedar.com/food waste. And we just wanted to thank the category sponsors for their wonderful support. So Second Bite, Oz Harvest, Food Bank, Coles, Dairy Australia, ADPF, the Gardner Foundation, Port Innovation, Harmony Agriculture and Food Company, MSC, AIP, RMCG, and Goodman Fielder. So to help us unpack the food waste problem, we have 3 wonderful individuals here that are doing some really interesting work. First of all, we have Claire Dyson, who is the Program Manager of the Australian Food Waste Challenge that I just mentioned then. For Rocket Cedar, and Claire has been with Rocket Cedar as a mentor for a number of years and has strong expertise in environmental management and the red meat sector in particular. Claire grew up on a tea tree farm in northern New South Wales. It's a fun fact there, but is now in Melbourne in And Simon Lockery, we have, also is an Associate Professor of Product Design Engineering at RMIT University and is also the Reduce Program Leader for End Food Waste Australia. Katie is the General Manager of Boomerang Labs, as well as Start Some Good and now Rocket Cedar. So busy woman. So first of all, I think perhaps we'll ask Claire to talk about some of the, I guess, the interesting learnings that you've gleaned from the Australian Food Waste Challenge. So over to you, Claire.
Thanks, Em, and hi, everyone. As Em said, my name is Claire. I've been the Program Manager for the Australian Food Waste Challenge. I think we started putting everything together in October last year and launched in March this year. And I've just come to the conclusion of it, which is very exciting. So I'll just give a bit of a sort of an overview of the challenge, how it went, and some of the really exciting outcomes. And I'll just mention as we move on, I think there's some people not on mute out there, so if you'd all mute, there's a bit of background noise. If we could all mute, that would be really great. So the premise of the Australian Food Waste Challenge was to cast the net out nationally and showcase both startups and small businesses around the country that are developing genuine solutions to food loss and waste problems. As I mentioned, Australia's commitment to SDG 12.3 is a 50% reduction in food loss and waste by 2030, and that's not very far away. 5.5 years away. It's creeping up on us, like all of our environmental related deadlines as such. So we really wanted to create something that showcased businesses addressing waste streams across a variety of sectors and connect them with organisations that had need for their solutions. The challenge launched in mid-March this year, and as Em said, we had some really great sponsors on board, like Goodman Fielder in the bread and bakery category and Coles taking on the retail category. And overall, a recurring theme came through when we were onboarding sponsors, and that was that they're all very keen to know what's going on in other sectors, and to focus on that cross-sectoral collaboration that we're also keen on, I think, from finding solutions. Obviously, they're very familiar with their own waste streams and solutions existing available to them within their sector. But, what if there's something happening, for example, in horticulture that could help them manage their own waste in the bread and bakery category? And we really wanted to attract businesses that are having a genuine impact already. So the call out was for organisations with an ABN and a commercially available solution, or that have plans to make their solution commercially available. And at the time of close of applications at the end of May, we had a really strong field to choose from of over 35 applicants, all small businesses or startups addressing food waste streams in different sectors across the country, which for a first-time challenge, I think is really fantastic. Shortlisted applicants were then given a specific challenge to address, which was developed by the sponsoring organisations. And I think that for us was probably one of the most fascinating parts of the whole program, hearing from sponsors what their biggest or most challenging issues are for them in addressing food waste streams. So, for example, with upcycled food, there's lots of products on the shelves now, both in Australia and globally, that are utilising food waste streams as input ingredients. But for the biggest challenge facing upcycled products is consumer perception. So the challenge for that category was for applicants to develop B2C and B2B marketing strategies that address consumer concerns. Another highlight is, again, in the process of setting category challenges, and in particular, when we were able to bring together key leaders from Australia's 3 major food rescue organisations, so Foodbank, OzHarvest and Second Bite. And I think for me, having Sarah Pennell from Foodbank, Lucy Coward from Second Bite and Tracy Bialek from OzHarvest, they're all fantastic women in critical roles in those companies, all come together to collaborate and agree on a specific challenge for applicants to take on was a really great experience. Somewhat sobering at the same time is to initially hear that their biggest challenge is that they face is not enough supply to meet the demand that they face around the country for feeding people in need. Throughout the judging process, I think, and that process has occurred over the past few weeks and only just been finalised, it's been fascinating to hear how all the different sponsors considered different solutions. I'd sit on the sidelines, obviously, and remain impartial, just guiding and facilitating. But some applicants that we thought would be really strong in a particular category were actually considered to be much more benefit in an entirely different category by those sponsors. So there were some really surprising results to come out of it. And I think the final highlight for me is now seeing the results of the challenge come to fruition and seeing the challenge, the national challenge that we created and have spent a lot of time and effort working with sponsors and applicants really have genuine impact. So connecting finalists with their category sponsors for follow-up conversations recently and possible partnerships has been immensely satisfying. So I think that's a good wrap-up of the challenge. Back to you, Em.
Great, thanks for that, Claire. We'll come back to you later. So now, Simon, if you could talk about your role specifically in Food Waste Australia and well, more generally, what in Food Waste Australia do and your role in that as the project lead for Reduce, if I've got that right.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Emma, and thanks for having us. I'm glad we were able to support the challenge this year, and hopefully going forward there's more opportunities for us to collaborate. So the End Food Waste CRC, Cooperative Research Centre, is the acronym. began back 6 years ago, following about 4 or 5 years of development through the CRC application process, multiple rounds. The CRC is an R&D structure. If anyone's unfamiliar with CRCs, they're the biggest funding structures in Australia that bring together industry, government, not-for-profits and the academy to solve big problems. So wicked problems often, whether they're health challenges like cancer, issues around industry challenges or barriers, new technology developments, frontiers of data and cybersecurity, for instance, have CRCs. And our CEO at the time, Steve Lapich, had identified the fact that globally there was a recognition that food loss and waste was a particularly acute challenge, mainly because of the amount of food loss and waste occurring, anywhere up to half in developed and non-developed economies, which, by association leads to a huge financial loss, in the order of trillions of dollars, as well as up to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions just connected to food loss and waste, not food. Food is even bigger, but food loss and waste accounts for up to 10% of our greenhouse gases. So it's a huge challenge that needs a systemic approach across all pillars of the global community. And so the Australian federal government at the time saw it necessary to start a CRC that we had pitched. So our CRC addresses research and development to try and tackle that target 12.3 of Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is to try and halve food loss and waste by 2030. Our R&D focuses on reduction of food loss and waste first, and that's my program. So any projects that align to supply chain optimization, tracking data, measurement, technology diffusion, efficiency gains through particular stages in the supply chain or across partners, technologies, platforms, and value chains, through to retail and retail innovation. That includes things like policy, regulation, trade practices. There are projects in all of those fields. Through to the home, so a lot of projects around home reduction of food waste, where we can try and provide people in their households the tools, the behavioural infrastructure, the communication information to do better, and then through to food service and food donation and charity. So we are doing projects, R&D projects in all of those areas in the Reduce program. We also have the Transform program, which looks to transform food loss and waste that we have not been able to reduce into high value goods. We tend to play at the top of the waste hierarchy, the pyramid, the upside down pyramid you've probably seen many times, where we look to create food products, high value nutraceuticals, food ingredients, materials and products in separate sectors to the food industry that are high value, considered upcycling. We tend not to operate in the composting and waste to energy space. We see them as low value outcomes. We want to operate more in the feeding people through new types of products, but also looking at alternative products. And the one other area we look at is animal feed as well. We also operate in the policy and technology space, the enabling space for Transform 2. We also have the Engage program, which is really about training the future leaders in food loss and waste in the food sector, the packaging sector, etc. We have 40 positions in PhDs and masters. Those PhDs positions are exhausted. We have put people in all of those roles, which is great. And we now have a new program that has been launched in conjunction with KPMG and End Food Waste Australia, where we're trying to get industry professionals into PhDs in their industry roles. So a very specific type of PhD where we're training future leaders in situ with projects that are of value to the companies that they're part of or the governments that they're part of. That is a unique proposition in the Australian market, frankly, and something that we're very proud of, and we're hoping to fill those positions in the next 6 months. Engage has also been involved in a lot of the food waste analysis and data collection for the household, understanding the household in the Australian market, with some particularly world-leading consumer surveys, interviews, deep dives into practices in the home, really to set us up as an organisation to tackle in-home change for the better, which has led to a new pillar of our organisation, the Nationwide Consumer Behaviour Change Campaign, which has, off the back of the $121 million of funding we have for the CRC, so that gives you a sense of the scale of the funding for the CRC and the R&D we need to do in the 10 years to get to halving of food waste. We have an extra 10 million to start the process of a nationwide behaviour change campaign that the federal government has kindly helped us with. To start the process, we really need another probably 8 to 10 times that to run a proper nationwide behaviour change campaign, and we will be looking to our partners in state government, in the private sector, and the feds as well, to try and fund that going forward over the next decade. So watch this space for some very interesting consumer interactions on TV, radio, billboards, print media, etc. We also have the industry action arm of End Food Waste Australia. You've heard me talk about the CRC, but it's part of a broader group, End Food Waste Australia, which incorporates our R&D, our behaviour change work, and our industry action work, which incorporates the Australian Food Pact. It's a team of people that we have that go out and work with industry to create the benchmarks of their waste, look at the opportunities for change, and then provide the tools for action on that information. That group also is involved in a series of sector action plans to set the scene for what we need to do in sectors to change the dial in halving food loss and waste across the value chain in people's homes and in food service. Those projects have been run both within End Food Waste Australia and within the CRC, depending on where it made sense for us to run those sector action plans. We now have a whole series of action plans that are being implemented for change, and we have a whole raft of projects that will run off the back of those sector action plans and the hot spots of sectors that need addressing for better outcomes. So that's probably where I'll leave it. One last thing I'll say is that the CRC is obviously open for business. We have millions of dollars of additional money we haven't set aside for particular partners and projects. So we cater for the big end of town down to small business. Small business is at times harder for us to cater for based on the structure of CRCs, but we have created new mechanisms to try and cater for smaller, shorter, sharper projects in what we call the SME Solution Centre previously. And there will be an announcement this week at the National Food Waste Summit in Melbourne, down here at Jeff Shed, around a new program of works for SMEs, particularly in the value chain. So watch this space, and hopefully there's opportunities for collaboration with small and medium businesses to assist and contribute to the changes we're trying to drive through our work.
Great, thanks for that, Simon. Lots of work being done and has been done already, but lots of work to do. And, good on you to be in the position where you've got some money to spend. So that's great. But I guess that's a call out to everybody listening to this, that to get in touch with you, I guess, to help you spend some of that. So how does it I know that you can't really talk about this SME component yet because the announcement's later this week at the Food Waste Summit. But for example, if you're a corporate or, someone that just wants to get involved, what's the first, how would you approach the organisation?
They can come directly to us. There is a way to go through, I suppose, the front door. There's an inquiries email and form on our website at endfoodwaste.com.au. And so if you want to go through that pathway, you can, but feel free to also contact me directly or my team if it's a reduced project. If you want to go to the specific program, like if you've got a transformation, so upcycling food ingredients type opportunity, I would suggest you go to Molly Chapman, who's the acting program lead in that area. And if you've got an engagement potential, you go to Professor David Pearson, who is based at Central Queensland University, but runs the Engage program like me here at RMIT for Reduce. So look, you can come directly to us. The rules of engagement are, to be frank, we have some parameters for projects. Outside of those SME structures we're setting up, projects will start at a $50,000 cash contribution minimum, where we then double that to create a $100,000 project minimum. The project runs through a research partner. So we've got 12 research partners. So 9 universities and 3 state government agencies, including Queensland, so QDAF, SARDI in South Australia, and Chem Centre in WA. And then the universities are RMIT, QUTs, UQ, Central Queensland University, Swinburne, etc., Girton in WA. And a couple of the South Australian partners as well, of course, because it's our organisation's based there. We partner you up with the right research team. Those researchers could be in pure science and engineering. They might be in marketing and business strategy. It might be around analysing, pilot projects that have a very technical or very business or strategy-based approach. So we have obviously that range of research and development capabilities and extension potential as well. So it's really up to us to then partner you with the right people. It might be that you want to partner with someone else in the network of organisations, industry, government, not-for-profits. Again, we can make those connections as well. But yeah, those sort of key parameters around what a project looks like, runs through a research organisation, needs a minimum cash spend. We do obviously value in-kind contributions as well, but in terms of a project initiation, we need that initial investment to show that our partners are serious about running projects in this space and have the capacity to support them too.
Yep, cool. And thanks, Simon. And could you just provide a couple of examples of projects that you've supported in the Reduce theme, just to sort of help people think about how they might, come up with a project and approach you?
Sure. So we've supported digital tools. So we developed a mass cost flow accounting tool for business, a commercial cloud-based application. So Melbourne company Empower that took RMIT IP that was developed out of previous work with Sustainability Victoria, was then rolled into the commercial packaging up of that IP into a tool for business to measure their food loss and waste and the costs associated with that food loss and waste, and then do projection work around scenarios of change in their supply chain that they could do either in one area of the supply chain or across multiple stages. And that aligned to the food loss and waste protocol globally and ISO standards around mass cost flow accounting. Another digital tool we supported was Gander when they entered the market from Europe. We supported a piloting process where they integrated with point of sale systems in various retail stores. And we had a team of business and strategy researchers run those trials to analyse how people use the application, the digital application, and how the uptake was, and then strategise about how you could roll that technology out across Australia in the market. We've also done a range of supply chain intervention projects around, processing prawns on board trawlers in WA, or transporting bananas from far north Queensland across the eastern seaboard and exporting across to Japanese and Southeast Asian markets using real-time data technology, data tracking technology, and temperature assessment. We've looked at a packaging criteria guideline for saving food. Packaging is a contentious issue in food systems, but frankly speaking, if you got rid of all packaging right now, we drive a much worse problem, which is a huge food loss and waste problem. So the role of packaging has to be identified as, where is it appropriate, and how do we utilize packaging and allow people to use the full benefits of packaging appropriately, and how do professionals deploy that packaging and communication around the packaging properly so people use it. So we worked with industry to co-design a criteria of appropriate packaging for the best possible food loss and waste outcome. Yes, that packaging is now live, Jess. It's online on our website. The criteria is available. And it is now being deployed by the Australian Institute of Packaging. They've trained tens of thousands of people in it. It's being deployed by the World Packaging Organization, and the FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN, is now considering it for deployment globally through their programs.
Well,
So lots of different projects that we're running.
Yeah, that's great. So, it's good to see, I guess, the work being done in Australia and in Food Waste Australia having some impact globally. And I think that's really important as helping to, reduce food loss and food waste globally and do our bit to achieve that goal. James Stewart's got a couple of big questions here for you. I just might sort of dive into that before we get into go over to Katie and talk about Boomerang Labs and circular economy. I might start with the second question, which was he's curious about the logic required for matching funding with the CRC. Is it common for governments? It is common for governments, he says, but talking to innovators, they hate it versus a grant. What would you mind elaborating on that? I guess we could all chip in here, but Simon, I'll allow you to answer that.
Yeah, I'll be brutally honest here, right? We don't see ourselves as a granting organisation. We see ourselves as a co-investor. We're interested in IP. We have professionals in the space and networks that help support innovations grow and thrive. And that's really the model here. We're not, I suppose, a traditional government granting agency that's happy to sort of, pump out the money and not really, frankly, monitor how that, apart from some, cursory observation and management and reporting. They're there to grant and that's it. Whereas we are here to see, real impacts, which goes to your first question around impacts. We have quite a sophisticated impact model that we have developed, which is actually a piece of IP within our CRC, which is interesting, where we're looking at tracking potential and projected food loss and waste reduction, greenhouse gas emission reduction, people trained, food loss and waste donations to charities, uptake and increase. We're also tracking, obviously, our future leaders. And also another one of our major impacts that we're tracking is industry profitability. So again, at the National Food Waste Summit, next couple of days, you'll see the progress of those impacts. I think our previous impact progress is up on our website. That is updated, periodically as we are looking at that impact model, and all our projects feed into the model so that they're actually all contributing to those impact measurements. And look, our aim, like I said, my main aim is to halve food loss and waste by 2030 nationally, but there's all those other impacts as well that we're tracking through to 2030 and beyond, because it doesn't stop at 2030. We have an organisation that has a R&D arm that finishes in 2028, but our hope is, and we're working towards a strategy that we have an ongoing organisation beyond that date as well, as you'd expect with, behaviour change campaigns, industry action. There is a need and an appetite for this work. So we're building on the CRC's work to try and grow this organisation to be a player in the long term.
Cool. And just lastly, Simon, someone asked for the discount code for the Food Waste Summit. And I know that the online registrations are still open. The summit, I'll put it in the chat here, is happening tomorrow and the next day in Melbourne. What is give us a discount code, Simon? You should surely know one off by heart there.
I don't actually.
You don't? Okay.
I paid full price for my ticket. Everyone.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. We'll get one for you, Luigi. Yeah. I think it was Luigi that asked that.
We're hiring Jim Shed, so we've got to pay to keep the lights on. So, but the summit team are the team to approach for discount codes. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So now we'll move on to circular economy and Katie. So maybe you could talk a little bit about Boomerang Labs and also whilst you're doing that, talk about circular economy, and then also if you can, you know, provide some examples of agri-food related solutions that Boomerang Labs has supported and just sort of put that into context. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emma. And thanks, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Very excited to have this Rocket Seeder event. As some of you may have seen, you would have probably got an email from one of us. Boomerang Labs and Rocket Seeder are working more closely together as partners. So really excited as this is our first step, I guess, in doing so. My name's Katie. I'm General Manager of Boomerang Labs, and we're Australia's first circular economy startup accelerator. So we were established back in 2019. As we're seeing a bit of a gap in terms of support for businesses that fit into that category of circular economy. And I will give a bit of a definition for anyone that's still a little bit phased by that, because I know there's over 200 definitions. So I'll let you know how we see ourselves fitting within that. But there's a lot of attention, work from even one of our other partners, Energy Lab, in terms of climate tech and supporting those businesses. But there was something needed to bring in a new player, which became us, to support some of those other businesses that don't quite fit into climate or do, but facing different challenges because of some different stigma and different policy and you know, perception barriers in terms of waste, in terms of resources, and so much else that we are involved with at Boomerang Labs. So we run programs from the ideation phase for startups, right, when they're deciding, you know, whether it's a good business idea worth pursuing, through to our full accelerator program, 6-month-long journey for them to go through scaling and commercialization, and anywhere else they can go to from there in that time. So yes, that's, I guess, the bread and butter of the work we do at Boomerang Labs. And I guess me coming today is to be a bit of a cheerleader for some businesses that are doing just that. They're coming out with circular economy solutions. From the start, circular economy is seen as a systems transition away from business as usual. So when we say business as usual, I'm talking about the linear economy. I know it's buzzword after buzzword. I will walk through that in a second, but generally we are going through a linear economy model, which means we're taking resources out of the ground, making the things out of them, and then once we've decided there's no value left in them, we're getting rid of them. So it's a straight line, or I'm probably mirrored, so maybe it's a straight line that way. In a circular economy, we look to design out waste and pollution. We look to circulate products and materials at their highest value for the longest time possible. And we look to regenerate nature. So even just from those 3 key principles, which we like to steal from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, so most other people, to be honest, you can see why there's such an overlap between circular economy and agri-food, and hence why there's such an alignment between the work we're doing at Boomerang Labs, as well as what's happening with Rocket Seeder. So we are industry agnostic at Boomerang Labs. We get solutions coming through our programs that are involved in built environment, textiles, construction. I'm having a mind blank of every other industry in the world. I have software solutions coming through. We have a bit of everything in our programs, which is really great for creating really diverse cohorts, because they're all brought together. But yes, always carbon as well. Thank you, James. Great to see you. And it would be great to hear what you guys have been up to since Circular Hub with fish burners. But yes, they're doing, we see such a broad range, and they're all brought together with quite similar challenges in terms of trying to overcome the systemic changes required in terms of a circular economy. And food waste is a particularly interesting problem to be addressing, and we see lots and lots of our alumni focused on it. And I think there's a few reasons behind that, and I guess going to the weeds of the human behaviour behind it, I think it's partially because it's such a visible problem. We can see it at all stages. It's not just, you know, obviously there's a huge amount pre-farm gate, but it's also as us as individuals in the home. Sometimes it's really visible because, you know, we see that lettuce sitting at the back of our fridge that we realise that's been hidden by some other stuff and it's going a bit slimy, and, you know, that's something that's really evident to us because we're seeing it within our own home. But we also, it goes way beyond that, and it's actually the fact that we see the waste deteriorate, I think, versus some other materials that don't. degrade, or at least not within our, day-to-day realm. So the lettuce I say as the example too is because it's such a tangible example of the need to regenerate and use waste as a resource rather than as a waste. Is if you put plastic in a landfill, it's terrible. It's not ideal. It's a waste of resource. But I would argue, and don't come after me if you disagree, but it's not necessarily doing any harm. So it's a huge waste, but it's not really doing harm. But if you put a lettuce in there, it's going to emit huge amounts of methane. I see Simon nodding. I'm sure you have to explain that a million times over in your job. A lettuce is expected to take between 2 to 4 weeks to break down in a compost. It takes between 25 and 50 years in a landfill. So that just sounds bizarre, and I fact-checked myself beforehand because I've said it a few times, and every time I go to tell people it just feels like such an exorbitant increase in time based on landfill, but it's the double negative there. And that's why food waste, again, is really a significant waste stream for us to be challenging. And Emma also said earlier, 1/3 of the food that produced doesn't ever get eaten. So these are some of the really key stats that are quite daunting, and it's things that we know and things that are happening. There's a reason why individuals and startups feel quite empowered to create solutions in this area. I'm cautious of time and I don't want to ramble for too long, but as I said, I come here as a bit of a cheerleader for an example from our alumni who's involved in both agri-food and circular economy. And I don't even know, I should have told them that I was going to sing their praises, but maybe it would be a nice surprise if it gets spread along the grapevine. But we, in our 2022 Accelerator, had a business come through called Food to Soil. Some of you may know them. They're doing some fantastic work, and they recently actually they did an equity crowdfunding campaign and over doubled their reach and raised 400K towards their expansion. So think of kombucha for soil. That's how it's always explained by Annabelle and Josie. They come from really varied backgrounds, fantastic skill sets, both in sustainability and circular economy, but also within commercial kitchens in terms of, I think Josie's a dietitian by trade, and it brings some fantastic skills together, which is a great story that we find in a lot of circular economy startups, where it's people that have experienced the problem themselves in so many different capacities and bring something forward.
Yep.
So they create Australia's first, there's a full sentence on this, but it is a biofertilizer. It's microbially alive. That's why it's kombucha for plants. They use commercial food waste and turn that into a fertilizer. So it's a dual benefit for them. Is the first thing is that they're taking the food waste, but they're not just turning it into, necessarily downcycling it, but they're turning it into a fertilizer that can then regenerate soil. In 2014, the United Nations gave a warning that Australia, or maybe even the world, has 60 years worth of soil health left. So that means we're at 50 years now, if their estimations are still correct. And that's something that really stood out to me when we work with Food to Soil, is the fact that they're looking at the food waste, but they're also looking at the regeneration piece. So they're hitting 2 of the 3 key principles within the circular economy through what they're doing. And they're seeing food waste as a resource versus a liability, and showing that there's some significant impact through using it versus just making it go away to the side of them. So they're doing really well. Like I said, they recently just doubled their crowdfunding goal, but they've partnered with Harris Farm, with Superbarn, with IGA, and they also have their own web sales. So they've got audiences in terms of those retail spaces, but also open to wholesalers and working with farmers directly so they can use it on a larger scale as well. So I'm not getting paid. This isn't an ad. I'm just very passionate about what they're doing. And I think they're a really great example of all the right things that's going on in terms of circular economy and agri-food startups. I am cautious of time, but I wanted to first just very quickly also refer to another circular economy. Perhaps it's a scale up now. That's such a vague distinction between the two, but some other people may have heard of GoTerra. I wanted to point to them because they're another great example doing similar things where they're both keeping products in use for longer by using food waste as a resource, but they're also regenerating nature through what they're creating. So they use black soldier flies. They use black soldier fly larvae, and they have their robotic. shipping containers that are turned into little insect farms. And they're doing not the exact same thing, but the same process of using the food waste as a resource to create a whole new product, which creates value elsewhere. And I can see people are sharing some links in the chat, which is fantastic. Great to see other people are doing that, and that's something we'd love to hear. If you've got example of you're doing this in this space, or you're looking for something in this space, please share that in the chat. And I know Emma will have questions soon. But yes, Yoterra's recently received over $10 million in funding. I'm not sure what their latest plans are, to be honest, but that's what I've heard is the most recent stat. They're backed by Grok and Tenacious Ventures, which are some really large VC firms in Australia too. So I guess in bringing those two together, I want to show a more advanced and or a more developed and a startup that's further on their journey, and then Foods to Soil, which is one that we've had through our programs. Just to show there's so many different ways also to address food waste through circular economy and agri-food, and needing to look at these examples as some ways to do it, but there's no silver bullet. We do need to be looking at different ideas and different technologies to make it scale. So that's all I had. Thank you, Emma.
Great, thanks for that, Katie. And you've just mentioned some all-female founders. So that's good. And Olympia's obviously a big personality and very popular and is having some great impact. And I must mention it's not easy. And as Katie, we work with startups and startup founders on a daily basis, and you have to be really passionate about what you're doing, because it's really, really hard work. So hats off to those women. That's fantastic. Just we've got lots of things coming through, stats and stuff on the chat, but I've just got a sort of I guess it's a curly question for you, Katie. Working in the food waste space, I've just sort of noticed that to be truly circular, to have a truly circular economy seems to be, I guess, it's just really hard. It's almost impossible. So I've just wanted to know what you do at Boomerang Labs sort of to help that with the circular mindset sort of more broadly, because you've got these examples, you're supporting these startups, the founders that sort of they're doing it, trying to solve these problems. But what do you do, I guess, on a sort of more general scale at Boomerang Labs to help people understand the issues in what exactly circular economy is?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thank you for the warning. It was a little curly, but it's a great question, because I think it is circular economy itself can feel really abstract, and it can feel like this huge problem. Like I even said, the phrase of systems transition, which in itself is terrifying, because we're living in such a complex environment and economy, and trying to get everything to work together like a puzzle to achieve circularity does feel impossible. But I think it's food waste. Like any of the other sectors we work with, to be honest, it's about talking to them and helping them understand what their market looks like. Understanding, like anything else, especially business that operates in different various supply chains, is that the business is a product of that environment. So in order to create circularity within your own loops, you need to go to the loops beyond you, and it gets incredibly complex between individual operations in businesses, bureaucracy, policy, and so forth. I guess what we do goes through a few different tiers. I guess there's education at the founder level, explaining to them where they fit into it, making that picture feel a little bit less overwhelming, making them understand what's going on, and helping them have those conversations themselves. There's no easy way to tell them that it's going to be hard, and trying to explain that, and working with them, I guess, to have those conversations and playing a role in that ourselves. So it's education at the founder level, but it's also education and engagement at the industry and the government level too. Sometimes startups can feel a little bit in the dark. Big players are doing a lot over here, and they're looking for innovation, don't know where to look, and then standing in the corners, these startup waving frantically saying, please help. We're doing it over here. We just need the resources. We need the connections. And I guess we're a little bit of a conduit between the two. It's not like people aren't looking for solutions. It's just sometimes they don't know where to look. They don't know where to find the startups. So we do a lot in terms of within our programs itself. We're engaging industry, we're engaging government and research to meet our founders, talk to them about where they may overlap, or if they don't overlap, why, what are those extra challenges, rather than just say, it's going to be hard. That sucks. But actually getting them the insights and helping them understand it more fully. Another thing too is always trying to see, as much as every idea we have come through is very unique, we also, on a planet that's got billions of people, so often those ideas have been happening just elsewhere. And Australia's in an unfortunate position that we're, 10 to 15 years behind in terms of circular economy, which is unfortunate in terms of our outcomes and progress in a way, but it's also puts us in a really nice position to potentially leapfrog some of the learnings that other countries have already gone through. So yes, we are, I guess, looking overseas, finding case studies, finding opportunities to meet with people internationally who are doing great things and learn from them, see how, the Australian environment on the market is different to overseas, or where there's similarities and where we can share knowledge from there as well. I think just because Australia's landscape is different from overseas doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking and we shouldn't be sharing ideas as well. So very rambly answer to your question, Emma, but I guess there's a few different ways we're trying to help founders with that.
That's great. Thanks for that, Katie. And it's a nice segue into my curly question I'll ask both Claire and Simon. I'll start with Claire. So get ready, Claire. Collaboration. This is my, I guess, biggest bugbear in the agri-food sector, not just related to food waste or circular economy or whatever, but Claire, you've been in the sector for long enough to, have some good ideas around how we could better collaborate in the sector.
Yeah, it's a really challenging one. I mean, I've grown up on a farm, as you mentioned, and even within that sector, farmers are standing talking to each other without really talking to each other. Everyone's very much keeps everything close to their chest about what they do, because they don't want, someone else to come and take what's theirs. And I think that's it. I've done a lot of work reviewing ESG frameworks recently, and some of the requirements that are coming down from things like the TNFD and the TFCD are going to really push the ag sector in terms of its collaboration and the information that's going to be required from bigger companies downstream in the value chain. So I think that's going to, I hope anyway, that's going to really help things, information sharing. But I can see also that a lot of organisations, and a lot of farmers in particular, are going to be really cautious at that too. But I think collaboration really comes down to relationships. It always has for me personally, and your network and knowing the right people and connecting people, which is something that both Rocket Seeder and Boomerang Labs obviously do really, really well. And people like the CRCs, working across different sectors, those relationships, I think, will be absolutely critical to making sure that we meet all of these targets, like the SDG 12.3 and all the other SDGs as well.
Well, cool. Thanks for that, Claire. Simon, collaboration. And I know Claire mentioned I guess networks and relationships are really important, and that's something that you and your colleagues in Food Waste Australia and the CRC in particular help with, and that's part of the deal, as opposed to the just get the grant and run. So it's about knowledge and sharing knowledge and networks and so forth. But what's your silver bullet to the collaboration problem in the agri-food sector in Australia?
You just have to do the hard yards to get everyone together in the same room often, and just keep on working through solutions. And there's no silver bullet to the problem either, right? So there's if you look at the FIAL feasibility study on food loss and waste, which was an extension of the national baseline that Arcadis did back last decade with our advice at RMIT, FIAL had 23 interventions we need. Some of those interventions are technological, some are policy-based, some are regulatory-based, some are finance-based, some are across all sectors, some are in some sectors. It's literally a network of collaboration required to tackle all of those. So what do? We are constantly engaging. We are constantly looking to partner people together, or for us to be in the middle as brokers of those relationships. I'll give an example. So when I see gaps in my research portfolio, in my area, I have 4 pillars to reduce around supply chain intervention and innovation, packaging technology, and processing, food charity, as well as data measurement, digital systems. So they're the 4 sort of areas I look at. When I see a gap, we put out additional calls for funding, and we set up research groups of like-minded researchers, experts in their field, the government department officials, and industry players to work on projects in that particular node or theme that needs more work and more projects to be deployed. We did that, for instance, in the last 2 years around food service in commercial and food service institutional. The difference being commercial, they're making money off food service. Institutional, they have to give a food service as part of their institution, but it's not their core business. That has led to a range of projects being deployed in those 2 areas. We've now set one up for supply chain innovation and interventions across different commodities, or within one commodity. And that has brought together, the Northern Territory, New South Wales, Victorian governments, South Australian, WA governments, with key researchers at universities and industry partners through osmosis, those networks, to work on project development in that space. So, I mean, it's in our name, cooperative research centres. Like it's the game. You have to collaborate to innovate, or there's nothing to do. Like there's no projects, there's no solutions, there's no problem definition before the solution. A lot of those groups, those core research team network meetings we have, is actually around problem definition. What do we actually need to solve? There's no point diving into problem solutions if you haven't defined the problem properly and come up with a range of options. So, in short, it's everything in terms of solving our issues.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's good. Collaborate to innovate. That's a good saying, and it is so true. So I think we're sort of we've got 5 minutes left here. We've got some comments, and are there any burning questions from the audience here that you want someone from the panel to answer before we get going, or any of the panelists want to say something, have a last comment? I think everyone's a little bit quiet here. I just, want to sort of personally thank the panel members for their time today, and, and commend, I guess, the work that everyone's doing. I personally want to thank Claire for all the wonderful work that you've done managing the Australian Food Waste Challenge. We will be announcing the winners of each of the 9 categories later this week. So look out on our socials for that, and sign up to our newsletter too, where you'll get up-to-date information about that. We hope to run another one next year. So if you want to be involved with that, I guess as a sponsor in particular, or anyway, please shout out to myself or Claire. And also I want to commend also Simon. You've been extremely supportive of Rocket Seeder throughout our accelerator program a couple of years ago, and the challenge as well, and also your colleagues. You're very approachable. and very collaborative and innovative and all of that good stuff. So well done, and let's halve food waste by 2030. Easier said than done. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.